What if I told you that it is possible to survive a polar blizzard in the bare steppe without a single log for a fire? The indigenous peoples of the Great Plains and subarctic regions have proven for centuries that the absence of forests is not a death sentence, but merely a challenge. In extreme cold, survival depended not on the availability of firewood, but on a deep understanding of the laws of nature. For centuries, people honed their skills of adaptation to empty spaces, where the only companions were wind and snow. They found ways to preserve life in the harshest places on the planet. When there was no wood for miles around, the main source of energy was the animals hunted by the tribes. The main fuel for keeping the fire burning in such conditions was dried bison or deer dung. In a world where the horizon is empty and the frost takes your breath away, they learned to extract heat from the earth itself and from animals. This skill transformed a deadly void into a home for generations of nomads. Every detail of their daily life was thought out to the smallest detail and tested by thousands of years of ancestral experience. Their knowledge of physics and the habits of wild animals replaced modern heating technologies. Watch the video to the end to find out how Native Americans built warm camps where there were no trees. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of survival in the absolute emptiness of the Great Plains. Imagine an endless space where there is not a single tall tree for hundreds of miles around. The Lakota and Cheyenne tribes did not panic when winter caught up with them in such harsh places. They understood that the main building material was not wood, but bison hide. Their dwellings were designed to withstand winds that could literally knock a person off their feet. A tipi is not just a cone made of hides, but a complex aerodynamic structure. To set up the frame in treeless areas, warriors prepared poles in advance in the foothills. They carried them with them on special sleds called travois over huge distances. If the poles broke or were lost, the Indians used a deep burial method. They turned their temporary camp into a semi-underground fortification to protect themselves from the cold. The warriors dug deep pits that served as a natural barrier against the piercing wind. These pits were covered with a frame made of large wild animal bones. Bison bones were just as strong as wood in extremely cold conditions. The use of skeletal remains made it possible to create sturdy dome-shaped structures for housing. These arches effectively retained the heat of human bodies within a confined space. It was a unique architecture of survival where each element had a dual purpose. People did not just wait for the storm to end. They continued their daily lives. The density of bison hides was such that they did not let moisture through at all. The skin perfectly insulated the interior from the icy outside world. This allowed the interior to maintain a microclimate suitable for long-term stays. The interior of the teepee was often supplemented with an inner canopy made of thinner leather. This canopy created an additional air layer to retain precious, heated air. A thermos effect was created between the walls, which saved lives on polar nights. This design allowed even the smallest amount of fuel to be used efficiently. The Indians knew how to use snow as additional insulation for the lower part of the teepee. They sprinkled the edges of the skins with a thick layer of snow for complete sealing. This eliminated any drafts at floor level, where people slept. Even in the harshest blizzards, it remained fairly calm and quiet inside. The experience of their ancestors allowed them to accurately determine the thickness of the skins needed for different seasons. For winter dwellings, they chose the skins of old bulls, with the thickest and densest fur. These skins were treated in a special way to keep them flexible in the cold. Each dwelling was the result of the long and painstaking work of many women of the tribe. We would be interested to hear your opinion on such construction methods without the materials we are used to. What do you think about the possibility of spending the winter in a house made of bones and skins? Would you be willing to try such an experiment in the wild? Write about it in the comments because your personal opinion is very important to us. Thank you for watching our channel and taking an interest in the history of the great peoples of the plains. Be sure to subscribe to our channel right now so you don't miss any new episodes. We have lots more unique content about ancient survival techniques in store for you. Become part of our community of explorers today. Are you ready to learn the truth about how to keep warm without a single piece of wood? When firewood was initially unavailable, the most accessible resource of the open plains came to the rescue. Native Americans used dry bison dung as their primary and highly effective fuel. The Lakota Indians had a special term for this material, referring to it as the fuel of life. Without this simple substance, the existence of the great nomadic civilizations in the heart of the prairies would have been physically impossible. Bison dung burned slowly and provided very even, stable heat for heating. When used correctly in a hearth, this dung produced almost no acrid smoke. This was critically important in a small enclosed space during a storm. Collecting this fuel was an important ritual that ensured the survival of the entire group. Women and children spent many hours searching for sun-dried patties, which guaranteed a warm night for all their tribesmen. The process of gathering this resource required special attention to the quality of the material. The Indians knew that only a product that was perfectly dried in the sun would provide maximum heat and minimum unpleasant odor. In the steppe, where the wind blows for hundreds of miles, such cakes dried to a stone-like state in a matter of days. They were collected in large leather bags and stored in the driest place in the camp. It was a real gold reserve for every family in case of sudden frosts. In the absence of large trees, the Indians also used shrubs and very tough grass. The grass was tied into dense bundles, which resembled wooden logs in density. Such bundles burned long and intensely enough for cooking. They allowed water to be quickly boiled in special leather or clay bags. Grass bundles required special skill when twisting, so that no excess air remained inside, which would cause them to burn quickly. The skill of making such grass logs was passed down from generation to generation as an important craft skill. A properly twisted bundle could smolder for hours, maintaining the desired temperature in the center of the dwelling. This allowed other types of fuel to be saved and comfort to be maintained even in the harshest weather. The craftsmen knew how to choose the types of steppe plants that had the densest stems. Preparing this fuel required patience, but it was well worth it during the winter months. Mastering the use of fire in such conditions required exceptional attention and caution. Every spark was worth its weight in gold, as it was difficult to get it back. The Indians used special horn bags to carry smoldering coals. The coals were wrapped in dry moss and damp leather to preserve the heat for a long time. It was a kind of portable energy storage device, which was protected from moisture and dampness by all available means. Life in such camps required strict discipline and thriftiness. Every piece of fuel was accounted for and used with maximum efficiency. People learned to conserve energy by avoiding unnecessary movements and heat loss. It was a school of survival in conditions of extreme resource scarcity. Any wastefulness could have tragic consequences for the entire community in the middle of winter. Discipline applied not only to fuel, but also to maintaining order in the hearth. The fire was never made too big so as not to spark and burn the roof. A small but intense flame was much more useful for heating the interior. Each family member knew their place by the fire and their responsibilities for maintaining it. Thriftiness was not a sign of poverty, but a sign of a high culture of survival. The use of dry grass required knowledge of its various types and properties. Certain types of grass burned brighter, while others provided longer-lasting heat. From an early age, children learned to distinguish useful fuel from ordinary rubbish. This knowledge was passed down from father to son as the greatest treasure. Young trackers knew every plant in their area and understood its true value for a fire. Some herbs were collected specifically to provide bright light during nighttime gatherings. Other types of vegetation were valued for their ability to smolder for a long time and give off intense heat without a flame. Such botanical knowledge was vital in the harsh conditions of the prairies. Mothers taught their daughters how to stack layers in the fire correctly for different household needs. Each plant had its own character and purpose in the life of the tribe. Even the ashes from such a fire found their use in the tribe's daily life. They were used to clean skins or as a remedy. Nothing was thrown away, as every resource was invaluable in the steppe. It was a perfect waste-free system of life support in a harsh climate. The Indians believed that everything the earth gave them should be returned or used to the end. As we conclude our story, it is worth admiring once again the resilience of the people of that time. They proved that the human mind is capable of finding a way out of any dead-end situation. Warmth can be found where it seems to be completely absent. The main thing is to look around carefully and respect the gifts that the environment offers. These lessons from the past can be useful to us in the modern world. How effective do you think this fuel is compared to the firewood we are used to? Could you use such alternative energy sources in an extreme situation? Share your experiences or assumptions in the comments below this video. In the next chapter, you will learn how Native Americans use cold as a building mortar. You've definitely never heard of this unique secret before. It concerns the use of extreme cold as man's main construction ally. In the northernmost regions, Native Americans built dwellings out of turf and frozen earth. They cut out flat layers of earth along with strong grass roots. The roots served as reinforcing elements for the walls, similar to modern iron reinforcement. These blocks were stacked on top of each other to form very thick walls. They were able to withstand any pressure from the icy Arctic wind. These were real earthen fortresses that literally grew into the landscape. Such structures became completely invisible to enemies and wild animals. The interior layout of such houses always included a large central hearth. Raised sleeping areas were located around the perimeter for better heat retention. The earthen walls had enormous and very useful thermal inertia. They slowly heated up from the hearth and just as slowly gave off heat at night. Whale ribs or large moose bones were often used for the roof. The roof was covered with a thick layer of earth and forest moss. Over time, the moss froze and turned into a monolithic, durable structure. Such a dwelling was practically eternal with proper care. It required minimal repairs during many harsh winter seasons. Special attention was always paid to the entrance to this underground dwelling. The entrance was made in the form of a long and very narrow tunnel at an angle. The tunnel was located significantly below the floor level of the main living area. This technique created an effective cold trap for heavy frosty air. The cold prevented warm air from escaping through the exit. The physics of this process allowed heat to be retained inside without unnecessary expense. People inside could wear light clothing, even in severe frost. The windows were made of thin, translucent intestines of large animals. They let in enough dim light but did not let any heat escape. This was the pinnacle of engineering thought among the peoples of the subarctic regions. Inside such houses, special niches were often arranged for storing food. The cold of the earth acted as a natural refrigerator for meat supplies. This allowed provisions to be kept fresh throughout the long winter. Families could feel safe and well-fed in their shelter. Earth houses were built by entire communities, helping each family. This strengthened social ties within the tribe in difficult times. Collective labor made it possible to erect such structures in a very short time. Everyone knew their task in preparing sod blocks. Like this video if you are impressed by the ingenuity of ancient people. Your support helps us find more and more amazing facts about life. Just imagine how much valuable knowledge has been lost over the years. We are trying to restore this picture of the world, especially for you. What you are about to learn will change your perception of comfort. Living creatures often became the main source of heat in winter camps without firewood. Native Americans knew that warm-blooded organisms release a lot of useful energy. In a small enclosed space, this heat became a decisive factor for survival. People understood that every living heart in a tipi works like a small stove, warming the air around it. This knowledge allowed them to survive where any technology would have failed. On particularly cold nights, people slept in very close family groups. They covered themselves with several layers of heavy, warm bison skins. The skins were always placed with the wool inside for direct contact with the body. This created a thermos effect, where every movement of heated air was preserved. A special microclimate arose between people's bodies, which prevented the cold from penetrating this living fortress. Sleeping side by side was not only a tradition, but also a harsh necessity. Such closeness helped not only to keep warm, but also to feel the support of loved ones in times of danger. Small children were always placed in the center, protected from any drafts by the bodies of adults. The more people there were in one shelter, the higher the overall temperature rose. Collective warmth allowed life to be sustained even when an icy hurricane raged outside. It was a simple but incredibly reliable system of natural heating. Domestic dogs of various breeds were often used for additional heating. The animals not only reliably guarded the camp from uninvited guests, but also served as living hot water bottles for small children and frail elderly people. It was a close symbiotic coexistence for the sake of preserving the life of every member of the community. Dogs were often invited into the sleeping area to lie at the feet or next to the weak members of the family. The animals understood their role perfectly and behaved very calmly and quietly in the tents. The warmth of their bodies was constant and stable throughout the long night. In return, the dogs received protection from the wind and their share of the meager winter food. Such friendship between man and beast was the basis of life in the desert steppes. The use of dogs as warmers helped to significantly reduce the risk of frostbite in the most vulnerable. Fur sleeping bags were the pinnacle of portable clothing at the time. They allowed people to sleep directly on the snow without the slightest harm to their health. Caribou hair is hollow inside and filled with ordinary air. This makes it the best natural insulator in the entire northern hemisphere of the planet. The Indians skillfully used these physical properties of fur to create the perfect equipment. The hollow structure of the hair prevented body heat from escaping, creating an impenetrable barrier. Nomads carefully selected the skins of winter deer, as their fur was the thickest and longest. Such a sleeping bag was very light and incredibly durable in use. The skillful cut made it airtight, preventing even the slightest draft from entering. It was a true work of engineering art, made from natural materials. The Indians also used stones preheated on a fire for a comfortable sleep. The stones were heated on small fires and carefully brought inside their dwellings. They were neatly wrapped in pieces of leather and placed under the bed or at the feet. They gave off gentle warmth throughout the long polar night. The stone cools very slowly, gradually sharing its accumulated energy with the person. This method was especially useful on nights when the fire in the hearth had to be extinguished. Caring women's hands prepared such stones for each family member before bedtime. It was important to choose the right type of stone that would not crack from the heat or fall apart. Well-heated granite or basalt could warm the bed until dawn. It was a simple and safe alternative to an open flame inside the tent. This method allowed the desired temperature to be maintained without excessive acrid smoke. The stones served as excellent accumulators of energy collected during the short daylight hours. The entire way of life was completely subordinated to the idea of maximum heat conservation within the community. Not a single degree of valuable energy was to be wasted or lost into thin air. The wisdom of the people lay in their ability to derive benefit from the simplest of objects. The accumulation of heat through stones allowed people to rest in silence and cleanliness. The absence of smoke in the tipi had a beneficial effect on the health of the hunters' lungs and the sharpness of their vision. Each stone was a valuable tool that was carefully preserved and carried along during migrations. This made it possible to quickly set up heating in a new place, even if a storm prevented the lighting of a proper fire. Saving resources was a key rule of life. People learned to regulate their body temperature with special breathing techniques. There were special sleeping techniques that allowed them to keep warm even in extreme cold. This knowledge was passed down from elders to young people as an essential part of their education. Physical endurance was combined with a deep understanding of the physiology and capabilities of the human body. A calm and measured breathing rhythm helped the blood to carry heat more quickly. The experience of our ancestors teaches us that humans can find a way out of even the most difficult situations. The main thing is not to give up and to use all available resources with the utmost respect. Nature always gives clues to those who know how to listen and observe its laws. The warmth of the bison, the stone, and the human heart merged into a single symphony of life. This allowed entire peoples to flourish where others saw only cold death. Do you think it is possible for modern people to adapt to such a harsh life? It requires not only enormous physical strength, but also an incredibly strong spirit. Tell us if you are ready for such a test in the comments below this video. In the next chapter, we will discuss in detail how clothing replaced the walls of a house and served as a reliable shelter. In the absence of building materials, the clothing of the Native Americans was their fortress. A complex, multi-layered system of skins allowed a person to survive without a fire. Clothing was designed to retain a layer of still air against the skin. Native Americans used fox fur to trim the hoods of their jackets. This prevented moisture from their breath from freezing directly on their faces. Every detail of their wardrobe was deeply functional and very well thought out. Winter moccasins were always made significantly larger than summer ones. The inside of the shoes was stuffed with dry, soft grass or bison wool. This created a reliable air cushion to protect the toes. The soles were often lined with thick rawhide for strength and dryness. Mittens were securely tied to long cords inside wide sleeves. Losing mittens in the steppe meant certain death from frostbite. The women of the Plains tribes achieved incredible skill in tanning hides. They made them so soft that the leather became like fabric. For winter clothing, they deliberately left the natural thickness of the durable hide. The use of tendons as thread made the seams completely waterproof. Clothing was a mobile home that was always on the person. In such gear, a hunter could spend days in a snow pit. He could calmly wait for the blizzard to end without risking his life. It was clothing created by centuries of experience in fighting the elements. Particular attention was paid to protecting the lower back and internal organs. Wide leather belts served as an additional layer of insulation and support. The clothing did not restrict movement, allowing for active hunting in the snow. The color and finish of the clothing also had practical significance. Light-colored skins served as excellent camouflage during winter hunting. Wolf fur on the edges of the clothing deterred small predators and insects. Each element of the costume spoke of the status and experience of its owner. Clothing was the pride of every Indian and their main protection. There were special capes made of animal skins to protect against freezing rain. They were coated with a layer of fat to make them water repellent. Wearing such a cape, one could stay dry even in a heavy storm. Water simply rolled off the surface without penetrating the fur. After returning to camp, the clothes were carefully dried away from the fire. Too much heat could make the leather stiff and unusable. Proper care of equipment was the responsibility of every warrior and hunter. This extended the life of the items for many years. The Indians knew how to repair clothing in any conditions, even in the field. Everyone always had small kits with bone needles at hand. The ability to patch holes saved them from losing heat at a critical moment. It was a culture of caring for the things they created. What was found in the old archives sheds light on the secrets. Scientists have discovered descriptions of temporary camps that were built in a matter of hours. The Indians used snow as an ideal and very accessible building material. Snow blocks were cut from dense snow with special bone knives. The blocks were stacked in the shape of a hemisphere or a high protective wall. This instantly reduced the wind speed inside the improvised camp. The perceived temperature inside immediately rose by several critical degrees. This saved entire groups during sudden changes in weather. Very light frames were often installed inside such snow fortifications. The frame was covered with thin leather to create an additional inner chamber. The air gap between the snow and the leather created a glazing effect. This kept the heat inside and prevented the snow from melting quickly. The Indians knew how to accurately read the structure of the snow in order to select the best blocks. They chose the layers that had the best strength. Their knowledge of solid-state physics helped them survive in the wilderness. They triumphed where even the most experienced European polar explorers perished. Snow was also ideal for camouflaging the camp from enemies. Snow walls made the camp invisible against the backdrop of endless white plains. This allowed people to rest in complete silence and safety. The interior was lit by small bowls of animal fat. Each such shelter was a temporary masterpiece of engineering. After use, these houses simply melted in the spring, leaving no trace. It was architecture that was in complete harmony with nature. Man did not destroy the environment, but temporarily borrowed its resources. Old records describe cases when entire villages disappeared under the snow. They created extensive tunnel systems to move between dwellings. This allowed them to avoid going out onto the icy surface during severe storms. Under the snow, the air temperature remained stable and quite acceptable. These tunnels were used as common areas for meetings and rituals. People could communicate and support each other in difficult times. The snow served as a reliable roof over the heads of hundreds of people at a time. It was a unique experience of collective survival in an extreme environment. Researchers were amazed at the cleanliness and order inside these snow houses. The Indians used wood ash to absorb excess odors and moisture. Each room had its own ventilation system through tiny holes. This prevented the accumulation of dangerous carbon dioxide from the lamps. Want to know how they coped with the lack of calories in these houses? Food in the absence of firewood was specific and high in calories. We will talk about this in detail in the next informative chapter. Stay tuned, the most interesting part is yet to come. In conditions of fuel shortage, the Indians developed a unique and nutritious diet. The main product was pemmican, a mixture of meat, fat, and sour berries. This product had enormous energy value for the human body. Pemmican could be stored for years without losing any of its beneficial properties. It could be eaten cold, which saved precious winter fuel. This product provided the body with everything it needed to produce heat. Bison or deer fat was often consumed by Native Americans in its pure form. Fat was the main and most powerful fuel for human metabolism. The Indians knew that the need for calories in the cold increases significantly. They always stored frozen meat in special underground pits. The meat could be sliced thinly and eaten almost raw. This method of eating preserved all the important vitamins and minerals. Roots collected during the warm season also played an important role. They were ground into flour and mixed with fat into a thick mass. This resulted in filling flatbread that did not require baking over a fire. The lack of a proper kitchen was fully compensated for by the biological value of the food. Water was obtained by melting clean snow in leather bags. The bags were hung near small fat lamps for gradual heating. The entire feeding process was optimized for energy conservation. People received maximum benefit with minimum resource expenditure. The Indians knew how to find edible parts of plants even under deep snow. They knew which lichens could be eaten after soaking. This knowledge came in handy during the hungriest periods of the winter season. Nature always gave a chance to those who knew how to listen to it. Ice fishing was another important source of fresh food. The Indians cut holes in the ice and used bone hooks or spears. Fresh fish was an excellent addition to the dry pemmican diet. It provided the necessary fatty acids and proteins. After eating, animal bones were carefully split open to extract the marrow. Marrow was considered a delicacy and the most valuable source of energy. No part of a hunted animal went to waste in the winter camp. Thriftiness was the basis of survival for every member of the tribe. Sometimes hot springs were used for cooking if they were nearby. The geothermal energy of the earth served as a natural stove for cooking meat. The Indians valued such places and often set up winter camps there. It was a gift from nature to people living in the cold. The culture of food was closely linked to religious beliefs about the world. Before eating, thanks were always given to the spirit of the animal for its gift. This maintained psychological balance and respect for the surrounding world. A well-fed person was ready for the new challenges of the long winter. Life in conditions of constant cold required special mental and spiritual preparation. The Indians perceived the harsh nature of the plains as their most severe teacher. They instilled in their children patience and the ability to remain completely calm in any situation. Collective responsibility was the foundation of survival for the entire community in the camp. Everyone understood that the well-being and safety of all their tribesmen depended on their personal contribution. This training began in early childhood and continued throughout life. Children were taught not to complain about the cold, but to accept it as a natural part of the world around them. Calmness helped them conserve strength and not waste precious energy on empty emotions. In the conditions of the steppe winter, panic or anger could lead to fatal mistakes. The wisdom of their ancestors dictated rules of behavior that saved lives. Each member of the tribe knew their role and performed it clearly and in a timely manner. This eliminated unnecessary fuss and conflict within the very confined living space. Traditions and rituals helped to maintain morale during the longest nights. Storytelling was the primary means of passing on knowledge to future generations of hunters. Through myths and legends, children learned lessons about navigation, animal habits, and the secrets of keeping fire alive. A spiritual connection to the land gave people the strength to overcome any unimaginable difficulties. They believed that the spirits of their ancestors always invisibly helped them on their difficult journey through the snow. This belief was reinforced by real practical skills honed over many centuries of living on the plains. Each winter camp was a serious test of the wisdom and unity of the entire tribe. The Indians saw a deep sacred meaning in every natural phenomenon. They believed that winter was a time when the earth slept and gathered strength for a new cycle. This attitude allowed them not to fight nature, but to adapt to its rhythms. Prayers and songs helped them feel part of a vast and living cosmos. This gave them a powerful surge of strength at times when food supplies were running low. Spiritual fortitude was their invisible shield against winter storms. A successful winter was considered a shared triumph and a huge reason for well-deserved pride. Men and women competed in their skill at providing comfort for their beloved families. This created a positive mood even on the darkest and most extremely cold days. Life went on despite all the challenges and threats of the hostile environment. Each new dawn was greeted with gratitude for another night survived. At the end of winter, the tribe held small celebrations in honor of the return of the sun. These moments of joy united people and gave them hope for a quick warming. Craftsmen showed off new leather and bone items they'd made over many months in their tipis. Women showed off their skillfully embroidered clothes, which kept their loved ones warm in the cold. Pride in their people was the best motivation for further development. The elders closely monitored the emotional state of young people during the winter. There were special games that were played right inside the cramped and dark teepees. This helped to maintain the necessary physical fitness and avoid falling into deep depression. Laughter and sincere fun were considered the best cure for winter blues and apathy. Active games in a limited space developed agility and quick reactions. The games were often competitive in nature, designed to awaken excitement and a zest for life in young people. Even simple games with bones or leather balls turned into exciting tournaments. The elders encouraged the winners with kind words or valuable advice from their personal experience. This distracted from the monotony of winter days and the constant howling of the wind outside the walls. Emotional release was necessary to maintain sanity in a confined space. Special rituals of purification and preparation for the coming spring season played an important role. People sincerely believed that the purity of their thoughts directly influenced their success in the upcoming hunt. Winter was a time of deep reflection and inner growth for every adult warrior. It was a period of silence before the active onset of the long-awaited warm season. It was a time to reevaluate values and strengthen the will. The psychological resilience of indigenous peoples still sincerely amazes many modern researchers. They found amazing beauty in the frozen steppe and the great silence of the snowy plains. It was a special aesthetic perception of the world, almost inaccessible to a person from a noisy industrial society. Harmony with themselves and nature was their main and most reliable protection from the cold. They did not just survive, they lived a full and rich life among the snows. As we conclude our story, it is worth reflecting on how much we can learn from these people. Their experience shows that strength of spirit and unity can overcome any climatic obstacles. Inner light can warm even when everything outside is frozen in eternal ice. The psychology of survival is, above all, the psychology of humanity and mutual respect. These values remain relevant today, regardless of the level of technology. The Indians knew how to choose places for their camps, taking into account the subtlest microclimate. A small hill or a bend in the river could create a zone of relative calm. They used their knowledge of prevailing winds to orient the entrance to their dwellings. The angle of the walls of the teepee was always adjusted by the experienced hands of women. This allowed the entire structure to remain stable in any hurricane-force winds. The use of natural caves was also part of their arsenal of useful techniques. If there were rock outcrops on the plain, the Indians actively used them. Stone walls served as excellent heat shields for the small internal hearth. They never tried to fight the landscape, but wisely adapted their lives to it. This allowed them to remain inconspicuous and well protected from external threats. Even frozen bodies of water were used as convenient roads for groups to travel. The ice under the snow was a smooth and reliable surface for heavy loads. The Indians knew where the ice was strongest in different winter months. Their entire life cycle was synchronized with the seasonal changes in nature. A deep understanding of the environment made them true and wise masters of the land. They read the earth like an open book, full of useful advice and clues. The vegetation in the lowlands served not only as fuel, but also as a natural barrier. Shrubs retained snow, creating additional protective barriers around the camp. The Indians knew how to use these snowdrifts to insulate their dwellings. Nature itself provided solutions to the most complex engineering problems. Animal tracks provided information about nearby sources of water or food. Hunters knew how to read the signs left in the snow by forest dwellers. This helped them plan their forays for fresh meat with minimal risk. Observational skills were vital for every inhabitant of a winter camp. The Indians distinguished between dozens of types of snow based on its density and moisture content. Each type of snow was used for its own specific needs and purposes. One was suitable for construction, another for obtaining clean drinking water. This classification was much more complex than any modern scientific system. Orientation by the stars allowed them to find their camp in the absence of landmarks. The clear winter sky was a huge and accurate map for them. Knowledge of astronomy helped them predict changes in the weather and the approach of storms. People lived in tune with the cosmos, feeling their inseparable connection with it. Even the sounds of the winter steppe provided important information about the state of the environment. The crunch of snow underfoot could reveal the exact air temperature. The ringing of ice on the river warned of the onset of movement or cracks. The Indians' hearing was attuned to the slightest vibrations of nature. This symbiosis was the result of thousands of years of continuous experience living on the land. The Indians did not separate themselves from the ecosystem in which they lived permanently. They were part of the great cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Their culture was the highest manifestation of human adaptation to the planet. Today, we view these survival methods as something remarkable. However, for Native Americans, it was their normal, everyday reality. The ability to build warm homes without trees is a great lesson in adaptation. We learn from them how to use the minimum for comfort. Modern technology often makes us too dependent on external sources. The experience of the Lakota and Cheyenne reminds us of the inner strength of the human mind. Ingenuity born of necessity has created unique and beautiful forms. This knowledge reminds us of the infinite limits of the human spirit. Each tipi in the snowy desert was a true monument to the will to live. The world of indigenous peoples is still full of mysteries for modern scientists. Behind every fact lies the real experience of thousands of generations of courageous people. By studying their way of life, we can better understand our relationship with our fragile planet. We must preserve this knowledge as part of our global cultural heritage. Many Native American techniques can be applied to modern design and construction. The environmental friendliness and efficiency of their solutions amaze progressive architects. This is wisdom that has been tested by time and cold. The Native Americans taught us that warmth comes first and foremost from within our hearts. If there is peace and harmony in the camp, the cold is not a threat to anyone. This philosophy of survival is relevant at all times and in all societies. We thank our ancestors for their lessons in resilience and ingenuity. May these stories inspire you to new discoveries and achievements in life. Nature is always ready to share its secrets with those who are willing to listen. The Indians of the Great Plains were the best listeners in human history. We are only trying to repeat their great path of knowledge of the world. As we conclude our story, we urge you to appreciate the comfort of your warm home. Remember how much effort it took our distant ancestors to create comfort on Earth. Every sip of warm water and every spark in the fireplace is a gift. May the wisdom of the plains always warm your soul in cold times. In the next issues, we will continue to explore the amazing worlds of ancient civilizations. New discoveries in medicine, hunting, and ancient crafts await us. The history of humanity is much richer and more complex than we usually think. Stay with us on this journey of great historical discoveries. Cherish traditions and respect the experience of those who lived on this earth before us. Every culture has contributed to the common fund of human survival. We are merely the guardians of this knowledge, obliged to pass it on to the future. May the light of knowledge never fade in your hearts and homes. Thank you for joining us on this exciting journey through history. We have tried to convey the atmosphere of winter camps as accurately and in as much detail as possible. We hope that you have learned a lot of new and truly useful information. See you soon in new videos on our unique channel. Which of the Indians' construction and heating techniques did you find most effective for use in modern extreme expeditions? Perhaps you were surprised by their ability to retain heat using dry grass, or their unique method of transporting hot coals in an animal horn. This ancient knowledge is still used today by professional survivalists and wilderness enthusiasts. Share your opinion on which method you find most practical in modern winter conditions. We always read your feedback carefully and try to answer the most interesting questions in future episodes. Suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. Perhaps you are deeply interested in ancient medicine, herbal remedies, or the secret hunting tricks of the past. We are ready to take a detailed look at the life of nomads and show how they obtained food and protected their families from predators. Your activity helps us develop and search for the rarest historical facts for new videos. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the most exciting stories about the life of the indigenous peoples of North America.